You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me. Hey friends, we're going to do something a little different today, and I'm actually really looking forward to this. I might get the giggles, I have to warn you. I actually have my friend Sonia online with me today to interview me, because what I realize is I've been doing this podcast for over a year, and I really haven't given much of an introduction into my life or my family. And so here we are, this many episodes in, and I thought it might be time for you guys to get to meet me. So Sonia and I have been friends for, let me think, probably near to 20 years. So we'll see. Let's see how this thing spins. And I actually have interviewed Sonia in the very early months of the podcast. She did an episode called Pray Like It Matters. And so if you want to go back and listen to the time that I interviewed her, you're going to need to scroll way back, July 25th, 2020. And I believe it was episode 6. So right at the beginning. Take it away, Sonia.
Okay. Pam, let's start with an easy one. So, what qualifies you to have a podcast?
Okay, that's really easy. Absolutely nothing. I am learning as I go.
Okay. All right. So how about background? Let's find out who you are. So tell me about your family, like when you were a kid. Where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Okay, so I grew up in Oregon mostly. Actually, a really interesting fact about me is I was born in Canada, but I only lived there until I was 2 years old. And then my parents got my citizenship papers for the United States. So I've been a US citizen since I was 2. And most of my growing up was in Oregon. Yeah, I did live in Montana for a little bit around second grade. And then my senior year of high school, I moved to Indiana to stay with my best friend and her family, just as a fun adventure. Totally crazy. Yeah, after high school, I lived in Washington State for a little bit, but that's most of where I grew up. So my childhood was pretty much like most that grew up in the 70s and 80s, right? We rode in the back of pickup trucks without seatbelts and unrestrained. I walked to 7-Eleven regularly to get myself a big gulp. And I spent hour after hour after hour watching MTV because Michael Jackson's Thriller was going to be on, and you did not want to miss it when he came on. Did you watch that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
That's absolutely right. I was right there with you.
Yeah, I know. It was just something you did in those years, right? I had the yellow Michael Jackson poster up. He's in his white suit. So I had a Cabbage Patch Kid when they came out. My mom worked really hard to get me a Cabbage Patch Kid when they came out. And I was snooping around in the closet and I found it before Christmas. So she figured out that I found it, and I don't remember exactly how the conversation came about, but she tells me, "Oh, we bought Grandma a Cabbage Patch Kid because we thought Grandma would enjoy it." And so she gave the Cabbage Patch Kid to my grandmother. And I don't really remember the whole rest of it, but at one point I finally got my own, but my grandma got my Cabbage Patch Kid for a while.
That's so funny. Okay, so let's move on. When did you become a Christian, or at what point did you decide to live for Jesus and really start growing in your walk with him?
Well, I think that I was one of those kids who became a Christian when I was little. We did go to vacation Bible school. I remember distinctly getting left at a vacation Bible school because my parents forgot to come pick me up. And it was a different time, back in the 70s. I just remember sitting out on the sidewalk, and every teacher that left said, "Are your parents coming to get you?" And I said, "Yes, they are." And then they'd hand me a box of cookies. So by the time my parents got there, I had several boxes of cookies, but they came and got me. So they did their job. Different time period, right? That wouldn't happen now, but back
No.
then it did.
Wow.
So I think I accepted Christ when I was a little kid, but we didn't go to church. Even though we didn't go to church, my grandma would make sure she would send me to summer camp at a Christian camp periodically. And when I was 15, I was watching the relationships with people there, friendships, and I was seeing a different thing, a different devotion, a different contentedness, and just a different peace from the people that were at the summer camp. And I remember sitting down with the camp missionary, just bawling, really just being one of those kids that said, "I want what you have. Help me, explain this to me, because it's not my life right now." And so then when I went home from summer camp, I started going to church, and I just went to my grandma's church. I got really involved in the youth group there, and the youth pastor and his wife took me under their wing and just poured into me. It wasn't only them, but really any of the leadership there just started pouring into me and discipling me, and I grew. And it wasn't long before I got put on a leadership team, a youth leadership. It's just kind of growing and starting out. I remember going to Mexico with the youth group, and that was awesome. And then years later, when I had graduated from high school, I went back to that same summer camp and I worked on summer staff, and a second summer worked on summer staff. And then between the second and third, I stayed on into the year-round camping. So while I was there, so many times I was again watching the relationships between staff, with the camp director and his wife to each other, and the camp director and his children, and how he treated them, and all this full-time staff. I was watching them so much. I was learning not just how to run a backhoe and do a garbage run and put out watermelon and brownies for 200 kids, but I was learning a lot about my faith and seeing it be lived out in everyday life, which was really great for me. And while I was there, I was this age in my early 20s where I was thinking about my future. And I was thinking, all I want to do is be a wife and a mom. So I thought, well, I'll just keep working at camp. And then I thought, well, I don't know. I don't even have a boyfriend, so maybe I better think a little bit about a career or something. So at the end of that third summer, I went to the community college in my town, and I went to dental assisting school. So I was a certified dental assistant, and that was really fun. It was just a 1-year program, and I really enjoyed it. After that, this all kind of blurs together. But after finishing my dental assisting program, I thought it would be really cool to go on a mission trip before I anchored down into my adult life. I went with YWAM for about a month, just under a month, on a short-term mission as a professional. I got to go to Lithuania, and we did dentistry on children. So when I got home from that, the Lord just blessed me with finding a job full-time soon after I got back, within weeks. And I worked there up until the day before my first child was born.
Wow. Okay. So we skipped a little bit right there where you met your husband then. So can you tell us when that happened and how that happened?
Of course, everybody loves a "how did you meet your husband" story, right? And
It's the best part.
yes, and since you might know my husband, this will even be more full of giggles for you. There was a guy in our college group named James who I did not particularly get along with. And one day he brought this prayer request forward, and he said, you guys can be praying for me because I'm flying to Maryland to drive back across the United States with my brother because he's moving back home to Oregon. And I was like, oh no, how terrible. Could it get any worse? There's two of them. I cannot even believe this. I'm finding a new church because there is obviously nobody at this church for me. And so I literally I started looking at new churches because I thought this is a tiny college group and I will never find anyone here. You're laughing.
That's so funny. She's going to leave the church.
Yeah, I was pretty strong in my opinions, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And so once they got there, I was going out to my car after church to head home. And apparently James and Andrew were walking to their car after church. And James points at me from across the parking lot and tells his brother, "You're going to marry that girl." So Andrew's like, "Well, tell me a little bit about her." And so then James conveyed what he knew of me. It was funny because we did not get along. We were in the high school group together for a few years. And it turns out that Andrew left for college and then to work in June of 87, which that summer when I decided to follow the Lord and start attending church, I started attending that church in August of 87. So we missed each other by 2 months at the same church. So instead of meeting Andrew, I just knew his brother James. And so it is so funny now to look back and just say that, yeah, my brother-in-law called it. He knew each of us and he knew our personalities and he called it.
That's great. I love that story. Okay, so did you always want a big family? You said you wanted to be a mom, but what about a big family?
No, I thought I would always have one or two kids and I would work full time. That's my mom worked full time. She was a nurse. And I never even considered the thought of staying home and having any more than two. I mean, who would have more than two, right?
Sounds about right. That's what my mom did too. So, how did you learn to be a mom? And did you feel like you were prepared to be a mom?
Well, I babysat a lot growing up. And so I had a lot of, I felt like knowledge, of course, because I was a good babysitter, right? You're
It's so
laughing at me
similar.
again.
It's so similar.
Right. I could do a 2 hour run at watching children. I was good at that. But the whole like watching them all day long, I kind of could do that too. But the thing that was challenging was I've got to do food every day. I need to make medical decisions. Like, what qualifies me to make a medical decision? Then you get to the education and how do you educate, and then navigating sibling rivalry, and then, I mean, nutrition. And okay, as a babysitter, I was allowed to feed the children ramen noodles every single time. That doesn't cut it when you're a mom. It's not just hot dogs and ramen every day. And so, yeah, in that regards, I don't know that I was really prepared to be a mom, but I had a lot of people that I had watched through the years that gave me a little bit of an idea that there was something bigger, like there was a greater goal to motherhood. When my oldest was about 4 months old, a friend gave me a copy of the magazine called Above Rubies. And I started leafing through that. And I was so challenged. First, there's a lot of really cute pictures of cute families. And the whole magazine is filled with testimony about people's families and motherhood. And so I was really encouraged by that. I read those over and over, every little piece. And then the editress of that came out with a book about that time called The Power of Motherhood. And she literally went through each of these things that I was just starting to dabble with. she talked about food, and she talked about spiritual growth and marriage, and about all the different aspects of motherhood. And she took those and aligned them with scripture. That just fed my soul. That taught me. I was like, oh, it is more than hot dogs and ramen noodle. There's a lot more to being a mom than just keeping the children alive at the end of the day. That was great for me.
So the Above Rubies magazine was so important. And actually, I have the same testimony because you gave me an Above Rubies magazine, maybe even before I had children. I can't remember. I've been trying to think about that, but you were the first person to hand me one. So that was really important for me too. So you had that encouragement. What about any ladies in real life? Did anybody encourage you or show you how to be a mom in real life?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that lots of different people in different capacities, right? So, because there's different things we can learn from each person, because of their personalities and their own background and all things like that. But one I remember that maybe it just stood out in my mind. I had taken my children to a VBS, and my oldest, Caleb. Okay, what does the name Caleb mean? Bold and strong, right? Yeah. So we'd gotten home from VBS, and that evening I got a phone call from a woman who was working at the VBS. And she said to me, we need to have a talk about Caleb. He's really a handful, and he's really not wanting to do this and not wanting to do this, and he's choosing to do this instead. And I broke down. I was like, I know I'm having so much trouble with him. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do with him. And this woman, Betsy Ray, she encouraged me so much. She reminded me that God had a plan for each child that he brought into my home, and the timing of each one, the personalities of each one was something designed by God for a purpose. And so even though he was bold and strong, and she had children that were bold and strong too, even though he was bold and strong, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was just something for me to learn to work with and to guide and direct in the right way. And she told me, watch out, someday he's going to be a leader.
Okay, so when Betsy called you from VBS about Caleb and his behavior there, he was 4 years old, right?
He might have been 5. I think he was about kindergarten age, and Emma would have been about 3, and the twins were 1. And so I kind of had my hands full with 5, 3, and 2 1-year-olds.
So
Yeah.
you already had 4 little ones at home, all preschool age. Were you done then? That was already going beyond your 2.
Right. Because I figured I'd have 2 when we got engaged and we started talking about a family. Andrew said he wanted 4. And he came from a family with 4. So he figured, of course, naturally, he would have 4, right? He wanted me to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom. And I thought to myself, I have hit the jackpot. I get to stay home. I just need to have 4. No problem. That's great. And then our third one came with a twin. So it went by really fast. We had 4 under 4 for about 6 weeks. Then Caleb turned 4. So yeah, it went so quick. And so what did you ask me? I already forgot. If I was done, right?
Yeah, were you done by that point, or what were you thinking by that point?
We kind of thought we had had our 4, we were done. But then we had this second thought. We were like, well, they all came really quick. And if we looked at their school years, when we mapped out their years that they would be in school, we realized that because they came so quickly, they would all be leaving so quickly. And in just a matter of a few years. And so then we thought, for our own enjoyment and happiness, so that we're not bored, we should have one more because, it's all about us, right? We,
I love that. That's a great thought.
yeah, we were like, okay, we should have one more, really. And so Ruthie was born almost, was it about 3 years after the twins? So a little more time between. That was our largest gap. And it was actually during her pregnancy. Now, see, I had been reading Above Ruby's magazine, and I'd been reading testimonies of women for years at this point, but they were all really cute stories, and really neat testimonies. But I guess I never really thought about it for myself. And then I started just praying about it and reading scripture more, and maybe going through the Power of Motherhood book a little bit more. And I thought, wow, I don't know. Do I want to be done with 5? Should this be our last one? Maybe, like, what would it look like if we handed this over to God and let Him be in charge of that part of our life? So while I was doing that, I don't know if you do this, but back then, if I wanted my husband to read things, I'd leave them in the bathroom or leave them around the house next to the couch. And I would just, is that a little passive aggressive? Are you laughing at me?
No, I think that's great. And I think you must have thought of that because your husband's a reader. If I did that, my husband would not pick that up. So it wouldn't work for me.
Right. I guess we all have to have our methods, right? Anyway, somehow in his own study, he was also starting to weigh through that and think through that part of our marriage and our life. And so it was during Ruthie's pregnancy, we both kind of had a conversation and said, hey, what do you think about having more, being open to having more children? And we both agreed, yeah, let's do that. Let's just move forward with not making any final and permanent decisions, right? After Ruthie, a couple years later was Sarah, and a couple years after that, Clarity, and a couple years after that, Valor. And then our littlest was born, Eli, and he was born when my oldest was 17. So our final count, our final number was 17 down to newborn, 9 children.
Wow, that's so great. You know what I was going to mention that, do you remember when we were sitting in the nursery together with Ellie and Ruthie, and we were sitting all the way across the room from each other? And I said something about your next baby. And you looked at me and you said, what makes you ask that question? That you assume that there will be a next baby. And I said, well, you've already got 5. Why would you stop now? And you were like, huh. And then told me later that you guys had decided that, but weren't telling anyone or something like that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but it absolutely makes sense because once you have 5, people aren't always excited to hear that you're going to have another. And so that doesn't surprise me at all. But yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Years later, Caleb was about 11 years old. So this is obviously, I just gave you my whole lineup. So jump back a few years. Caleb was about 11, and he had this really weird pain, this huge pain in his jaw. It was like jaw, neck, the whole face was just painful for him. And it went on and on. And I had taken him to the doctor and we didn't have a resolution. I thought, well, maybe it's tooth related. So I took him to the dentist and had x-rays taken and scans done to see if he had maybe had an abscess or something. No resolution. I just felt like I kept taking a run at this and we could not figure out why he was in so much pain on his face. One night he was out on the porch, just screaming as loud as he could. We live out in the country, or we did at that point. And I said, what's going on? And he's like, it hurts so bad. And I know I'm not allowed to scream in the house. And so he was literally going outside to scream. And he wanted to die. and he was just 11. So we took him to the emergency room, and there we got some pretty bad diagnoses for him. They were throwing out all sorts of crazy leukemia and trigeminal neuralgia and all sorts of diagnoses, but they would need to do a little more testing. And I remember as we were going through that, thinking, God, we gave you control. We handed over the size of our family to you. And I thought you were going to give us a great big family. I don't understand why he could be sick this bad. And I don't know, I don't understand why, like, one of the doctors said maybe 6 months to live. And it was startling. Then I felt like God say to me, are you only going to trust me in the increase, or will you trust me if I decrease? And that was actually harder. That was harder than saying, God, bring me as many babies as you want. It was harder to say, God, I trust you. If you take him, we're going to trust you and we're going to walk through it. Then we ended up doing all the follow-up appointments and things. And it turned out that he actually had an infection in his jawbone that was not readable with any of the x-rays or any of the ways I had run on it with different doctors. And so once we got that figured out, 24 hours later of antibiotics, and he was fine. But this had been something for some reason unresolved, that it went on and on and on. But it really meant a lot to me to think about that and think about, how much do I trust you, God? And no matter what you bring our way, we're going to walk with you, and we're going to trust that you will lead us.
Wow. Wow. What a lesson. Okay. So it feels weird to move to homeschooling now.
It's a trust thing, though.
It really is. So you needed to educate these children. So how did you get to homeschooling?
That's kind of another one of these that I was never planning on doing. I'd never heard of homeschooling. I had no idea what it was. We lived in a cul-de-sac, and one day I was out at my mailbox, and there was a gal next to me getting her mail out, and we both pulled out a Focus on the Family magazine at the same time. So we looked at each other and said, oh, are you a believer? We both got the same magazine on the same day. How cool is that? So after I got that connection with her, I had the courage to finally ask her, why are your kids outside all the day long? They should be in school. Before that, I had never even heard of homeschooling. And that would have been about 95, 96, probably about 1996. I had never even heard of it. And so not only did I ask her, why are your children home all day, but why do you have so many of them? Because she had 6 children. And I remember thinking, oh my word, that's so many. And here I am with 9 now. Anyway, so at that point, I started spending a lot of time with my neighbor, and I just loved the way that her family loved each other. I love the way that they learned together, and the excitement and the fascination for the world around them. Yeah. So I was like, hey, I think I might want to do this homeschooling thing. Yeah, let's try it. So I told my husband that I wanted to homeschool, and he was like, yeah, maybe, like, for a little while I'll let you do it, but I don't know. And by 3rd grade, they most definitely have to be enrolled in a school.
How does he feel about it today?
Wow. Today, he's a total advocate. So on the days when I am like, I am done, we can just sign them up for something because I'm done. Then he's like, no, we can't. We're going to do this. And, what do we need to do? What, is it the housework that's too much? Maybe we should get somebody to come help clean the house once a month, or, trying to step back and problem solve for me, because he is now so sold out. He's so sold out that he has been on the legislative committee for the Oregon Ocean Network, which is the Oregon Christian Education Network. So he's really into it now.
Okay. All right. So now that we know you better, Pam, let's talk to them about your blog. Was that on your plans for your future?
No, again, it's one of those things. Do you see this recurring theme? No, I had no idea. No, I had no idea. So actually, I started getting the idea about doing a blog when my daughter got married and became a mom. I was thinking, oh, well, maybe maybe it's a new time in my life, right? I'm a grandma now. And I've had a lot of people say, well, you have a lot of kids. You probably have something you can share and encourage and pour into younger women. And I thought, well, how do you even do that? And so I actually Googled what is a blog, because I really didn't even know what it was. Honestly, I've been so busy raising children myself. I didn't have time to read any. I didn't spend a lot of time on the computer. Actually, I was hardly ever on the computer at all in those days. So, yeah, once Facebook came in, then I started on the computer a little bit more often, but I was really computer illiterate and still am to some degree. In fact, in comparison to my 14-year-old, I'm still computer illiterate.
So then the mom's Facebook group, was that something that you had planned to start?
And again, no. So what happened there was, well, COVID hit. The blog kind of pushed me into being in a writing group to learn more about writing. Some ladies on that writing group said, you have homeschooled for almost 20 years and you are used to having your children at home with you all the time. You could probably help some other moms get through this time where they're not used to that. Everybody's got sent home, and moms are struggling. They don't know what to do. And so it was the ladies in my writing group that encouraged me to start that Facebook moms group. And it has been so much fun. I am encouraged. It is like when people say find your tribe, I feel like they're my tribe. Like those ladies. I love it. And I think, I don't know, I feel like I try to pour into them, but I feel like I get poured into so much in my time there. And it wasn't long ago, I asked a question on that group about mentoring. And I said, who has a mentor in their life or has been formally mentored? Or are you just winging it? And I would say 3/4 of the ladies, at least in that group, responded that they were just winging it. And man, that's a hard place to be. I mean, I have been so fortunate to come across resources and people in my life that have poured into me to help me learn to mom, help me learn to be a wife, help me grow in my walk with the Lord. And I'm so thankful for that. I haven't had a lot of formal mentoring myself, but there have been older women who have taken interest in me and encouraged me along the way. And that's what I see happening in the Facebook group. And I'm excited for what's going on there. I'm excited for relationships to grow. I'm going to be working on trying to match some women with some younger women with some older women, and try to figure out, though, I mean, that's kind of the age-old question. How do we connect women and how do we mentor? I don't know. We don't have a great plan, right? But I think all of the technology that's come on board in the last year and a half will be an advantage to try to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. What a great tool. Okay, so then we're back to the podcast then again. And so I'm assuming that was not in your plans either.
No, it was not again, but I love to talk. And I love testimonies. I love hearing what God's doing in women's life. And that is, back in, well, years ago, Sonia, you know this part of me, that for about 10 or 12 years, I ran a mothering retreat in Oregon where we would bring in Nancy Campbell, who's the head of the Above Rubies. We'd bring her in and she would speak about mothering over the weekend. And then Sunday mornings was a testimony time. I loved it. It's like my favorite part of the weekend, to have women stand up and share what God was doing in their lives. Yeah, just such a precious time. And so, again, this group of writing friends encouraged me, like, you love to talk, you love to meet with people, you love testimony. Why don't you do a podcast? And I thought, there is absolutely no way. I am technically challenged. I don't have any idea. I don't know. There's no absolute way. But that summer, my husband said, well, Isaac is home anyway for the summer. His classes are canceled or at home online because of COVID. He said, we could just assign him to help you with it. So I thought, well, as long as he's here with me, and as long as we work together, and, like, that'd be, what a great thing to do with my son. That'll be so much fun to do something with him. And since he has the skills, all I have to do is learn how to push the record button and he'll cover the rest. Yeah. That was June of 2020. And July of 2020, God spoke to my heart and said, it's time to move. Then 8 weeks later, we were in Tennessee, but this college son was still in Oregon. So I got a really quick lesson on how to use my computer. I still stumble with it. I lose things with it. I misfile things. I've learned really good how to use the little part in the corner that says type here to search. If my husband ever opens up my computer to see, like, my filing system, yeah, he scratches his head and is like, I don't even know how you function.
So funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you trying to interview any famous people? It looks like you've interviewed authors and such. What is your goal there?
Yeah, the author thing, I wasn't expecting at all. My intention, okay, obviously you're listening to this, if you're listening to this recording, right? It's the Mom Next Door Stories of Faith, because I love testimony and I love hearing what's going on, and how God moves and brings us to a different point in our life of faith and trust in him. So my thought was that everybody's got a story to tell. God's moving everywhere. And I've kind of felt like it was kind of stinky that only the people that are famous or that have platforms get to share their stories. And it makes us ordinary moms feel like our stories maybe aren't as important, that they're not as valid. And I just don't think that's true. The Bible tells us to share about the things that God has done and about his faithfulness, and just keep talking about the righteous things that he's done from generation to generation. There's no little catch in there that says, if you have a platform, or if you are famous, or if you've written a book. But I think the people that have written books do just have more opportunity. So my goal was just to interview moms that I meet. And I started out with so many of my friends in person. Sonia, you're one of them. And I just started hitting up all my friends. Hey, you've got a great story. Would you sit down with me and tell your story? Again, it is so fun because now I am meeting people and my eyes are open for, oh my goodness, this person. And so every now and then I get a phone call from somebody or a text that says, oh, you've got to meet my friend so-and-so. They've got such a great story. And so I love it when that happens. But every now and then I get a request from an author who's getting ready to release a book, or, one, I got a hold of a few people that I have read their books and I've just been blessed by their books. And I'm like, tell me the story behind why you wrote the book. So yeah, I was not intending on doing that, but either way, it's fun because if you are a person with a platform or of influence, or if you are just ordinary mom, God's working. And we need to declare that to the next generation and to everybody who is willing to listen.
Okay, Pam. So are you making any money on this podcast or the blog or any of the stuff that you're doing now?
Again, a no. That's so funny. I wasn't expecting to answer no to so many things, right? My husband and I feel like this is totally a ministry and a hobby. When my older children were younger, I scrapbooked. And, I tried to learn how to crochet for a little while. And, you have different hobbies through the years, and then also different ministries that you're involved in. So this is kind of where that's come together for me. It's so far, I will tell my husband, when I used to go to the scrapbook shop and spend money on stickers and special paper and fancy cutting scissors. So now I have a podcast, and I'm wondering if I could spend a little money on, this part of it or this other part of it. Yeah, I'm not making any money, and it's just kind of my labor of love, I guess, because I am enjoying it so much.
Great. So what can we do to support you in your mission of sharing women's testimonies?
I'm learning. Like I said, I didn't know any of this when I started. I jumped in with both feet and went way down to the bottom of the pool, right? Got way over my head, and I'm learning. I'm learning stuff, learning how to swim. I think obviously any ministry is praying for the people involved and praying for the hearts of the people that the podcast goes out to, the people that might pick up the blog, find it online or whatever. And my group online. I love the moms group online. It's so awesome. And so, but what I'm finding is the best way to support it is probably sharing the show, like inviting you, like if this blesses you and if you're encouraged by it, tell a friend. So every week when I publish a new episode, I post on Instagram and Facebook. And what would be awesome is if people just shared those somehow. And then of course, I'm still learning how this works, but there's these fancy ways that the podcast figures stuff out. So anytime anybody leaves a review or clicks on stars to rate the show, then of course that helps. I also love it if people send me an email to encapsulate that, like, share, refer a friend, follow me, whatever, however the social stuff changes. So that's pretty much it.
Good. Okay. So we can share this ministry with other people and other friends. Any last thoughts that you want to leave us with?
If my story illustrates that at all, if God's calling you to do something, if he's setting out the path and putting these steps before you, walk into it. I am not equipped to do a podcast, right? I am not equipped I have to Google everything and have to ask my children to help me, to do all this stuff. But I also feel like if God calls you to it, he'll equip you and he'll connect you. Yeah, I guess that's the thing, if God is encouraging you to start something, to be part of something, even in the life of a mom, you know what? You've got a neighbor that needs an encouraging word. Somebody who just had a baby and they need a meal, or somebody has a car broken down and you have opportunity to help them. There are so many ways that we can just be involved in the work of the Lord. And so I think be brave, get pushed out of your comfort zone and be willing to say yes to God, because you never know where he's going to take you. And it's all part of the story he has for your life. Okay, Sonia, you did a great job interviewing me, and this was fun. Hopefully it was fun for other people with us and not just you and I.
Well, we had a good time anyway.
Yeah, I hope you ladies are blessed by being here with us today. And I'm going to put some links in the show notes for how to get a hold of some of the things we talked about. Sonia, we always close out with prayer. Would you mind just closing us out with prayer today?
I would love to. Lord, I just thank you so much for being able to be here today, that we would be able to just hear Pam's testimony, that she can share what you have been teaching her in her life and how she's just been burdened to share your story with everyone. And we're so thankful for that. We ask that you would bless the ladies who have listened today with what they've heard, and that they'd be encouraged through this ministry. Help them to just reflect on their own lives and what you've been doing in their lives, and that they would be encouraged to be courageous and to share that with other people so that your name would be glorified. And I just pray that you would help them to realize that no matter what their past has been like, you can use them for any purpose that you have for them. You will equip them and you will provide what they need, even if they don't feel like they have it now. And so Pam's just been a really great example of that. And I pray that that would encourage every single person listening today, that you are so big and you are so good and you love every one of these ladies so much, and you are working in their lives too. And I just pray that you would help us all to see that even if we don't have a platform, we have a big God and he is working, and we just thank you so much.
Amen.
Amen.
I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true, whatever is noble, think on these things, think on these things.